Coalition for Hunger Solutions Faith Community Action Team. We are glad that you are with us, and we have some wonderful speakers coming up. My name is Dabney Dwyer. I'm representing the Episcopal Diocese of Dallas. I co-chair this action team with Chelsea Horde with Dallas Baptist Association. And also I would like to introduce Wyanella Henderson Green. If you don't already know her, most of you all probably do. She is our coalition specialist and basically takes care of everything and keeps us organized and keeps us going. If you all would please also add your name and organization in the chat box. I'm getting a recording thing up here. Do I need to?
You need to click it and say continue or whatever it's asking.
Okay,
you.
all right. Sorry, guys. But also, so let me, if y'all don't mind adding your name and organization in the chat box so we know who you are and where you come from. From a housekeeping, just basic housekeeping, you all know about all this. If you would remain mute during the meeting, and if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and that we will try to address those during the Q&A. And if you have other helpful information that you might share with us in the chat. And just as a reminder, all the slides and handouts that you see today will be emailed to you after the meeting. Wyanella gets all that together and sends it out. So let me start with just a little short overview of the Dallas Coalition for Hunger Solutions, which was organized pretty much as a grassroots effort in 2012. And the current mission for DCHS is to empower Dallas County residents to gain equitable access to healthy food. Now, this is through a collaborative effort of multiple private and nonprofit organizations. As you can see here, all the organizations that are involved, it includes 15 people who represent the leadership team, as you can see. Wonderful organizations. So in order for us to realize the mission, the coalition is organized into 5 action teams: child hunger, senior hunger, urban agriculture, public policy, and the faith community. Our action team is the faith community. And as you see there, we have a leadership circle, which is a way for us to expand the wealth and expand what we're doing in the community and representations from the community. And our most recent person we've included is Pastor Julius Bonibe. So finally, we're lucky. The Faith Action Team has a wonderful tool or resource in order for us to implement our plan, and it is called the Hunger Solutions for the Faith Community. This is the 5th edition of this, what we call Hunger Solutions Guide. And Wyanella is going to take you through that a little more to give you some information about it. Take it away.
All right, I think you're muted.
Yes, please bear with me while I pull up our guide here and show it to you. Let's see, here it is. And let's see. Okay. So this is a PDF version of the guide. You can find this guide on our website if you go to dallashunger.org and continue to the Faith Community Action Team page. There's a navigation tool in the menu on the home page, and you'll see tabs for each of the action teams or the action focus areas. I think that's how it's described on the website, action focus areas. And if you go to the faith community action focus area, then there's a link on that page to this guide. And this is a guide for congregations seeking to improve food security in Dallas County. This is our 5th edition. We're proud of that. This is a table of contents here. You can see the partner organizations who are listed in this guide, who are looking for collaborators from the faith community. This guide, in this guide, each of those collaborators has, or each of those partner organizations has a page. This is the page for the American Heart Association, new to the guide this time around. Each page has an overview of the anti-hunger work, of the work of that organization, I'll say, the impact that their work has on hunger. There's a testimonial here on each page from organizations who are already involved, partnering with these hunger relief programs and organizations. There's information about how your congregation can get involved, how you can help, and there's a contact, name and phone number and email. And there are about 8 or 9, 10 different hunger relief opportunities in this guide. Community gardens, the Community Distribution Partnership with Crossroads. Crossroads works with partners in the southwest, western part of the Metroplex. How to help. Sharing Life is a community distribution partnership on the east side of the county, working with agencies in that area, southeast, northeast, east. Public policy roundtables. You'll hear from one of our speakers today is the co-chair of our public policy action team, and they are willing to work with congregations to help educate your members and the communities you serve about the impact of advocacy on helping to relieve hunger among our communities, among our neighbors in our communities. You can contact me for more information about that. Eating Well as a Snap is our senior hunger outreach project. There's an overview here of that, the impact on hunger and how your congregation can help. Again, I'm the contact person for that. VNA, we're going to talk a little bit further about this one later. Meals on Wheels, a lot of you are probably familiar with this organization. Out of School Child Meals includes summer meals programming and after school meals. You can learn more about how your congregation can help support those child nutrition programs. Super Schools, Super Bowl of Caring, we're going to hear a little bit about that later. We do have someone who's going to speak about the Tackle Hunger movement. That's part of the Super Bowl of Caring campaign. Senior community meals, senior centers are located around Dallas and Dallas County, and they can use help from congregations. So here's information here about how you can get involved there. And then there are some other hunger solutions that we added here. Cooking Matters is a program of the North Texas Food Bank. Virtual SNAP assistance, Help Finder, VOMO, Remember 211, and some tools to help your congregation get started and to be successful. So, okay. You can find that, as I mentioned, on our website, dallashunger.org. Okay, so we'll move on from that. It's available, it's free, you can download it. You can download it. You can download that whole document, or you can just bookmark it to be able to go back and forth and look at it. So it's available at no charge. Okay, so I think I'm finished.
Thank you so much, Wyanella and Dabney. Appreciate that. Thank you to each of you for making time to join us today at this meeting. We are very grateful to have two wonderful speakers with us this afternoon as we look at a debrief for the faith community on the 87th Texas Legislature session. We'll also be talking about policy and advocacy and how that plays an important role as we seek to increase food security across our counties. So joining us today, we have Lupe Conchas, who is with Bread for the World. He is the Southwest Region Organizer for Bread for the World. He's actually responsible for creating, growing, and sustaining a network of anti-hunger advocates and coalitions across Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. So he's got several states which he is responsible for. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Arizona and has been a community organizer for the past 11 years. Advocating for an end to hunger and poverty is important to Lupe because of his own personal experience as a child and teenager, not knowing when he would receive his next meal. So his faith has inspired him to dedicate his life to address food insecurity and to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. So Lupe will be sharing with us. And then following Lupe, we are grateful to have Denise Gomez joining us today as well. Denise serves as one of the co-chairs for the policy action team for the Dallas Coalition for Hunger Solutions, and she sits on the leadership team for the coalition as well. She's been a longtime supporter of the coalition since its inception, so we are happy to have her with us still. She enjoys working collaboratively to raise awareness and activate stakeholders on issues that will help move the needle in the right direction for our community. She holds Bachelor of Arts degrees in Public Policy, Spanish, and Markets and Culture, and minors in International Studies and Economics from Southern Methodist University here in Dallas. So after each of their presentations, there will be a time for Q&A. So if you have questions as we go through this, be sure you jot them down, and you'll have an opportunity to post those in the chat or share them during our question and answer time. So with that, Lupe, we're going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lupe Conchas, and I am out in the field today, so that's why I have my mask on. Today, we'll be talking about advocacy for faith communities, and I really appreciate the coalition for bringing me to present on this topic. I think it's very important, and I know that our faith communities are very critical to ensuring that we end hunger and poverty here in the state of Texas. So a little bit about Bread for the World, and I hope that you all can see my screen because there's this, there we go. So Bread for the World is a collective Christian voice urging our nation's leaders to end hunger at home and abroad. We are an organization that operates on the principle that faith communities are motivated by their shared values to address hunger around the world. We believe that our federal government has the resources, power, and influence to change these conditions so that we can end hunger in our lifetime. Let's see. We also believe that it is our moral calling as people of faith to be politically engaged. Practicing faith-filled citizenship is our right under the U.S. Constitution. Hunger is a profoundly political issue and one that should be a top concern for our federal and state governments. And we are serving God when we raise issues of hunger and poverty within our government. When we as members of churches and individual people of faith across the U.S. speak the same message to Congress about ending hunger, we are more likely to be heard. When we speak collectively, we are stronger and we speak with a louder voice. Bread can be a resource and a partner with you to empower your family, your church, your social ministry committee, your campus group, your community network, or Bible study group to raise its voice to end hunger. So this brief training is designed to share tools to help you and your faith community understand the importance of advocacy, demonstrate an effective exercise on shared values that you can use to train others, and provide resources and ideas to get started and answer your questions. So today we're going to be talking about the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. The story of self, you'll see, will be a call to leadership. What is your call to leadership? Why are you here? You're part of this. That means you're a leader in your community already. So you need to share that story of why. Why are you called to be a leader? The story of us is what are our shared values? What are our shared experiences? The story of now is taking action. What is the strategy and how are we going to get it done together? Like I said, this is tailored to advocacy for faith communities. So we need to understand what motivates you, what shared values do you have, and how are you going to motivate others, and create that sense of urgency with strategy and taking action. So the story of self, because stories allow us to express our values not as abstract principles, but as lived experience, they have the power to move others. The story of self should have a narrative structure as follows. You, the character, have an experience, a challenge that inspires you to make a choice or think a certain thing or a certain way. And also the results in something happening. For example, a dedication to ending hunger. So telling your story. You can also use these to help you. Challenge, what was the experience you lived in your story? Choice, what choice or thought did that lived experience inspire you to do? And outcome, what did you think, feel, do as a result of your lived experience? So challenge, choice, and outcome. So a little bit about my story. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up in Frescott Valley, Arizona. My mother is a fourth generation Arizonan. My father is an immigrant from Jalisco, Mexico. And for me, I grew up in childhood poverty. I remember the first home that we had was an abandoned trailer that my father found in the middle of a field. It didn't have any windows, any doors, any electricity or gas. It was really just a shell. And my father put it together for us. And I remember eating sardines, crackers, and grape soda in candlelight because it was only $1.50 and we couldn't afford our electricity bill. And it wasn't until I enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program when I got into kindergarten that I was able to have breakfast and lunch Monday through Friday. My mom and my father, they enrolled in the SNAP program, and they also got new jobs. My mom became a deli clerk at the local grocery store, and my dad started his own business in construction. And so we got into the working class and into the middle class. And so I was 16 years old, and my father was lost his job and had to go seek work in another state. He would come back to visit us, and on his way back to visit us during the holidays, he would stop by Highway Patrol, sent to Immigration and Customs, and eventually deported out of the country. And that's when I realized that my father was the only undocumented person in my family. And so I was left homeless for about 3 weeks when my mom took the entire family and the entire house 36 hours south to Jalisco, Mexico, to finish my senior year of high school. So I was hungry, I was homeless, and I didn't really have anywhere to go. And so I confided in a friend about my situation. And that's where I was able to finish high school, get accepted to a 4-year university, start organizing my communities and students to register to vote on campus about in 2010. And from there, continued working in the advocacy space in community organizing. And when I got out of college, I worked for the Arizona Department of Economic Security, which administers all of our SNAP and food stamp, Medicaid applications. And I did the interviews for those in Spanish and English. And before I came to Bread for the World, I worked at my local community college addressing college food student insecurity because 53% of our students could not afford three meals a day. And so for me, the work that I do here with you all and with Bread for the World is because I know exactly what it's like to live in childhood poverty. I know what it's like to be hungry, and I know that we can collectively change it together. So if we look at that challenge, choice, and outcome, You can see what my challenge was, you can see what my choice was, and you can see what the outcome was. And that's what I would like for you all to use in your own personal narrative when it comes to your story of self. So now we're going to go to the story of us, our shared values and motivating others. The story of us. We connect through values, shared values, which then convey emotion and then leads to action. So exploring our values, I want us to look at 3 images. This is the first one. And if you'd like to in the chat, or if you'd like to just share it yourself, or if you just like to keep it to yourself, what are some emotions? What are some things that are portrayed when you see this photo? Because what this exercise does is it's going to help us create some shared values, and also understanding that some of you folks are from nonprofit organizations, some of you are from faith communities and churches. Really understanding what brings all of us here in this in this Zoom meeting together, but also using this exercise to take back to your communities and your churches to establish shared values in the story of us. So here is the first photo. Here's the next photo. So some guiding questions. What are the shared values or interests that you see across the different photographs? How can faith communities use their shared beliefs and values to create a sense of purpose and work together? And how do our shared values intersect with each other around ending hunger? Here are some examples of some shared values: service, equity, empathy, compassion, trust, justice, peace, and wisdom. I'm going to check the chat real quick because I can't see it. But Reverend White Blair says, I see values of compassion and helping. Thank you. Exactly. And so we've gone through the story of self. What motivates you? The story of us. What are some things that motivate us together? Helping, compassion, empathy, service, equity. And now the story of now. A story of now communicates the urgent challenge we are upon to face now. The story of now focuses on the challenge that requires action, the hope for that action, and the choice we are calling upon others to make. In a story of now, you call on others to join in action. Why do we have to act now? According to Feeding Texas, 1 in 8 Texan households struggled to eat while the pandemic raged. Data analyzed by Northwestern University during the first 6 months of the pandemic showed food insecurity spiking to 1 in 4 households when massive job loss caused widespread financial stress. Food banks across the state fear substantial drops in public and private support, while requests for assistance remain in a very slow decline. We know we can't food bank our way through the end of this crisis. So plan to take action now. You've heard my story. You've heard our shared values. Now is the time to act. Here are some ways that you can get involved with Bread for the World in order to help us alleviate poverty and hunger for communities in Texas. You can discuss with your church or your nonprofit or your community or your family or your neighbors the possibility of joining our Offering of Letters campaign for 2022. Every year, Bread for the World, in the beginning in between January and May, we do a collective offering of letters in the state of Texas, in the Southwest region, and across the country. And we invite churches, nonprofits, and coalitions like this to join in our collective letter writing campaign. And this can be on a state issue, it could be on a federal issue, it could be on global nutrition, it could be on domestic nutrition. And it really is an organizing tool to help folks understand the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. You can host a virtual racial wealth gap simulation. This racial wealth gap simulation takes us to 13 federal policies, from the abolition of slavery to modern day voter suppression, in order to understand the racial wealth gap between white families and Black families. And just to give you a little bit of a spoiler, the racial wealth gap is a 13-to-1 ratio. You can host an in-person or a hybrid training. I'm available to be in North Texas anytime you need me, or we can send any of our volunteers or our members to host trainings like these, in-person, hybrid, or virtual. We have met with members of Congress, such as Senator Cruz and Cornyn's office. This year, we've also met with Representative Castro, McCall, variety of different folks. We would love to meet with Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson's office. She's part of the Hunger Caucus. So if you'd like to meet with your member of Congress by the end of the year, please let me know. You can also send an email, a letter, or make a phone call to your member of Congress. And lastly, I think this is my call to action, is to become a member of Bread for the World. It's a free membership. And lastly, you may be asking, what are some next steps? What are some other trainings or some other things that I can do in order to learn more about this movement to end hunger? Just like we have here in this team, we also will be having a regional meeting on November 10th at 3 p.m. Central Time. And that will encompass advocates from Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. And we usually have about 70 to 100 people on those calls, and usually have some special guests and a legislative update on what's going on Capitol Hill. And we would love to feature more folks from Texas. We've had Reverend Yvette Blair on one of our White House conversations when we met with the White House virtually. And so I encourage you to visit bread.org/regional meetings if you would like to join us on November 10th. It's only a 45-minute to an hour program. So with that, I really appreciate you, and just gonna leave my screen up right here if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lupe. If you have any questions for Lupe, if you want to drop them in the chat, we'll wait just a few minutes. And Lupe, if you wouldn't mind putting your contact information again in the chat. I think you did it earlier and it's kind of moved up to the top so that folks can have that readily available. That would be great.
Lupe, I have a question.
Yeah.
How long have you been holding the Offering of Letters campaign? And what typically has been the response?
Yeah, so myself, I started with Bread for the World in 2019 and did my first cycle of advocacy with the Offering Letters in 2020. But Bread for the World actually started in 1974 in the Lower East Side of New York with a Lutheran pastor who then reached out to a variety of different Christian denominations and then a variety of interfaith religions to do an offering of letters to Congress on the right to food resolution in 1974. And so Bread for the World has been doing the offering of letters since 1974. And of course, in 2020, it was really difficult as a new organizer to come in during the pandemic when, churches are closing, pastors are not sure how to care for their communities. And folks are unsure of when if we could hold any in-person meetings. And so we kind of had a restart in 2021. Collectively, we only had about 10 churches and organizations across the region successfully do an offering of letters. And an offering of letters is really even one letter from a church collectively, or we've had a one church do 100. We've had churches do 500. We've also had churches do 2,000. But anywhere from 1 to 1 million letters, it all counts. And so what I'm looking for in this group is a few churches who would like to start the process of understanding how to conduct an offering of letters, and understanding that collectively we can have an impact. And so I would love for North Texas to have a few churches or representatives to be a part of the collective OL, because we'll be asking communities all across the Southwest to write letters to the members of Congress in the beginning of 2022.
And do they send the letters to you, or you have some steps that they take to that result in the letters getting to our elected officials?
Yeah, so the letters can be physical handwritten letters. They could also be emails. And what we do is, in our cycle of advocacy, we do the offering of letters. We have our advocacy summit in June. So folks can either take their letters from their communities to Washington, D.C. with them. We can take them to Washington, D.C., or what we could do is also deliver them when we meet with members of Congress in the district in August. So August recess is when Congress and all the members of Congress go home to meet with their constituents. And so we could deliver the letters and the collective emails at that time as well. So it's all part of a cycle of advocacy, of writing letters, getting people involved, getting people to tell their stories, training leaders, then doing the advocacy summit for more leadership training, and then getting in the August in-district meetings for folks to actually use their voice and meet with their members of Congress, and then in the last quarter, reflect, celebrate on our victories, and start strategizing and planning for the next year.
I have a question, Lupe.
Yeah,
Um,
we have room for this last question. And then
oh,
we
okay,
have-
I'll be quick. I mean,
Yeah.
can you give us a little more information about the virtual racial wealth gap simulation? That sounds quite fascinating. Is this where, are these folks that all sign up for one, or do you try to host groups of churches, for example? Just a little bit more info, if you would.
Yeah, definitely. So the virtual racial wealth gap simulation, we used to do them in person until the pandemic, of course, and we then transformed it to a virtual simulation. And so we've hosted groups as small as 5 or 10, and hosted groups as large as 500. And so I know that there's been interest through the Houston Food Bank to train all of their staff. So they have about 500 people on staff. So it could be anywhere from a group of 5 to 10 to a group of 500, whatever the Zoom account. Our Zoom account can host up to 500 folks. So if you'd like to host a small group of people, or if you'd like a church to be a part of that, just let me know, and we can make sure that we get that scheduled on the calendar for you, and that we provide all of the resources, and myself or one of my colleagues will facilitate.
Thank you.
All right, that's all my time that I have for today. Thank you so much. And I left my email in the chat, and I love these meetings. I'll continue coming to them every time we have them. And now I'm going to pass it over to Denise.
Give me 1 minute to share my screen. I feel like I'm getting tech difficulties here. 1 second.
In the meanwhile, I'll just remind everyone to please mute yourselves.
Well, it's not going to do it on the computer that I wanted to do it, so I'll just share it on my other desktop. So 1 second. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again, Dabney and Chelsea, for the invitation to address the faith community today. And a special thanks to everyone who is participating. I think by even taking the step of participating in this session means that you're already even thinking about advocating, and this is already on your mind. And we need as many advocates around this issue as possible. So thank you again for taking interest in participating in today's training. I'm gonna take us back to a little nostalgic period in our lives when we were in government in high school. In order for it to make sense, and really understand what took place during the 87th legislature, we really need to understand sort of the basics. And in order for me not to assume that everyone kind of knows the basics, I really just wanted to take a couple minutes at the beginning just to kind of set the stage and level set with everyone. So some of this will be sort of a reminder course of things that you might have already know about or have known for a while, but this is just a refresher. So I wanted to start us off with just the Texas Legislature 101 and really understanding how our government is set up in the state of Texas. So much like our federal government, we have two chambers, the Texas Senate and the Texas House. And the Texas Senate has 31 members. The Texas House has 150 members. They serve different terms. So for senators, they serve 4 terms, and the lieutenant governor presides. For the Texas House, the Speaker of the House presides, and they also serve 2 terms. One thing to note, and for those who have lived in Texas for a while, we know this to be true for a couple of years now, is that it's a Republican-led body on both sides. And a couple things to know about the actual leadership, and I'll kind of articulate a couple of things that they're responsible for that will end up eventually impacting some of the things that happened this past legislature, is around committee assignments. So we'll go straight into lieutenant governor. So our lieutenant governor is Dan Patrick. He is a Republican and serves as the president of the Senate. He also acts as governor if the governor is out of state or dies. And I think one of the most important roles that he has is he has the responsibility of appointing Senate committee chairs. So those committee chairs are really, really important because they set the tone for what will be discussed during committee meetings, and they hold a lot of power. The lieutenant governor also decides which bills get sent to which committee and when a bill will come for a vote. And so that very fact is very, very important because one thing that is true about our Texas government is that we file a lot of bills, and really our government is really the design of the government is, and how we pass bills is really meant to kill bills a lot easier than it is to pass them. And so when the lieutenant governor decides which bills get sent to which committee, the earlier that they get sent to committee, the likelihood, the better likelihood that they have of actually going through the entire process. The other thing to note is around just the logistics of the legislature itself. So the 87th legislative session began January 12th and ended 140 days later. It's sort of a frenzy to get to the end, and you don't have a lot of time as a state representative or a senator to really go through the entire process of passing all these bills. And so you really have to, there is sort of like a frenzy towards the end of session to make sure that that your bills don't die because of calendaring or trying to get them through committees or getting them out of a vote. So just to kind of give you some context of how many bills were filed, we had about almost 7,000 bills. That's an enormous amount of bills that were filed. Out of those 7,000, about 1,073 made it to Governor Greg Abbott's desk. And then the governor, of course, being governor, he has the power to veto, and he chose to veto 20 bills passed by the Texas legislature this past session. So overall, it's a very complicated process. We didn't talk about Speaker of the House, so let me do that. So the Speaker of the House is Dade Phelan. He is also a Republican from Beaumont, and he serves as a speaker. He is a regular House member and is elected by the other members of the House of Representatives at the start of the legislative session, and he also provides over the House. So this position also appoints chairs and members to the committees and maintains order during floor debates. And then another thing to know about the House that's a little different from the Senate is that all bills that raise taxes or revenue for the state must start in the House. So again, just some really basic information to start us off with the conversation and move us forward. So we talked a little bit about the logistics already. We talked about how many bills are filed and the fact that our system is the design of how bills are passed are really meant to kill bills a lot easier than they are to pass them in the first place. And another thing to note, and what was a little different about this past legislative session was special session. So if the governor decides that the legislature still has unfinished work to do, he can call both chambers back for a special session. This past year was a little unprecedented because the governor actually had 3 special sessions. And so even though logistically and officially the session was over May 31st, it's only recently that that our representatives have had a break. And there's a lot of things that the state legislature was having to deal with. A couple of things, if we look retroactively about what's happened this past year, there was a lot of attention on policing because of what was happening nationally and across the state. There was also, we also dealt with a little thing called the winter storm, which was unprecedented. And so there was a lot of attention that was brought to that issue. Lots of attention on the pandemic, of course. And so there was a lot of larger sort of national and state themes that were that had the attention of our legislative body. And you're sort of competing with all of these larger kind of themes. So let's move forward to another slide. As I was kind of preparing for this presentation, this infographic really just shows the complex process by which a bill becomes a law in Texas. It kind of looks like a game of life, actually. So you start up at the top and then you have all these things that you can pull a card, something happens and your bill dies. And so there's even what's funny about the our state government is that even the vocabulary is sort of funny. You can kill a bill, you can the bills can die, you can resurrect a bill. So there's a lot of activity that happens. It's almost like a little soap opera within 140 days of how a bill actually gets passed or dies on the floor, or even it may not even get to the floor. One thing to note around this chart that I want to make sure that you guys take away is that, you know, the legislative process is complex, But even on this chart, which probably doesn't even have all of the areas where a bill could die, there's 13 examples of how a bill can die in this chart. So the fate of most bills is not determined by a vote from one of the chamber floors or by the governor like vetoing a bill. It's actually a result of calendar rules, because again, they only have 140 days. So as more time kind of passes, their staff and our elected officials are kind of in a frenzy to make sure that they get passed through all of these hurdles that you have to pass to get to this place, which is where you want to be, where the governor actually signs the bill. I also wanted to kind of discuss the state budget. And this is, again, really important for us to know as a refresher. So our state is very large. It is because we are such a large state. We have a big budget to pass. We have over 216 billion in budget dollars. And in order to organize this appropriately, when we're passing legislation, our government divides these buckets of money into 10 articles or chapters. So one thing to note here is there are really two buckets, Article 2 and Article 3. Article 2 deals with health and human services, and Article 3 deals with agencies of education. If you notice just the bars and the percentages, these two buckets take up most of our money. And when we're talking about hunger and hunger related items, not all, but the majority of the time you're dealing with Article 2, health and human services. And this goes back, I won't spend too much time. I was debating if I should go into detail about the different committees. But because of the time and the restraints that we have for this meeting, I won't go into it. But one thing to note is that the chairs of the committees where the bills around SNAP, around anything around nutrition, things that are related to hunger related food access bills, the chairs of those committees and the members of those committees have a lot of power over them being able to get through the process. So they, in order for them to move along the process of a bill passing, they need to go through different committees, and oftentimes they die in committee or they never even get heard. And so being able to know exactly who sits on those committees is really important. And that's one thing that I'll address in another slide, is really learning who your state legislative members are, and really understanding what stance they take on hunger, and seeing how close they are to North Texas, and being able to develop a relationship with them is very important. So I did want to talk a little bit about the policy action team, and then what role we took during the 87th legislative session. So much like this committee or this action team that represents the faith community, we have another action team that focuses on policy. And our goal is really to promote strong local, state, and federal public policies to improve healthy food access. And we do that through a variety of ways. We advocate, we educate, inform, and build relationships. So what we're doing today is really educating and informing on things that have already occurred, but also just the importance of being able to use your voice as an advocate. Because we are a group of volunteers and we have a dynamic group of members that are community leaders and are very passionate about this topic, our main prerogative or focus has been really to organize policy forums as a strategy, and making sure that we're bringing to light and bringing public awareness of certain issues that aren't really being talked about, and seeing the connection, highlighting some really best practices that are happening locally, regionally, and nationally. to folks that are wanting to impact this work or interested in impacting this work. From the legislative perspective, there is a larger body called the Texas Food Policy Roundtable. And we were lucky to be a part of this group this past year. And this group is a broad-based group of Texas leaders who have joined forces to develop, coordinate, and improve implementation of food policy. Lupe and I actually connected through this policy roundtable. So we were able to join, and we took a supportive stance. So we collectively, as a stakeholders, identified different things that we would support together, and then we pushed out information through our network. So if you received an email around this event, there's a good likelihood that you're already on the listserv. And Wyanella in previous months during the summer, or even before that, was passing on different action alerts. That was through the Food Policy Roundtable and conversations that were happening at that time, to raise awareness around issues that needed to be where we needed some folks to call either a legislative elected official in the area, or we wanted you to send a note, send a tweet. We provided those recommendations based on a collective body that was coming together from the state, and identified like core things that we would take action on together to potentially move the needle in the right direction. This body is chaired by every Texan and Feeding Texas. And again, we took a supportive role. So one of the key wins, and probably the biggest win that we had this past session, which was HB 221. To put things into perspective, the statistics that are found on the left are around senior hunger. HB 221 was specifically geared towards addressing senior hunger and making it easier for individuals that had disabilities and being able to access SNAP. So a couple of statistics that were found through Feeding Texas is senior hunger. We have the state of Texas has the 5th highest rate of senior food insecurity in the nation. That's a very, very high percentage, and a very disappointing statistic, especially in a state as big as Texas. We have 11% of Texas seniors that are at risk for hunger, and then we also have low rates of senior enrollment in SNAP. So only about half of 500,000 income eligible Texas seniors are actually enrolled in SNAP. And there's a variety of reasons that I kind of want to point out. One is it's difficult to navigate the application. So if you've ever seen the SNAP application, it's cumbersome to say the least for anyone. So there's issues around just understanding what the application is asking. The state of Texas does not make it easy to apply for SNAP just by the basis of that application itself. There's additional barriers that seniors are facing in comparison to other population groups. One of them is limited mobility. We know that there's a lot of like homebound seniors that don't necessarily have easy access to a car, or not, or just have physical mobility where they can't physically are able to move or go to a certain place. There's also access to technology. We know that we have a huge digital divide in the state of Texas, specifically in North Texas. And it got a lot of attention with virtual learning and children, but we forget our seniors that are also dealing with the digital divide and may also have barriers to accessing technology. And there is sort of this movement to more and more to access and leverage technology as a way of improving systems. But for senior populations where that is that face-to-face enrollment is critical, it makes it difficult. There is also just a lack of awareness of the program and with regards to seniors. And so there's a variety of reasons of why these statistics are so high. This bill was really aimed to improve that application process. Many of the seniors that would benefit from this bill are seniors with fixed incomes or people living with disabilities that are on fixed incomes. And so this bill basically provides a shortened application form, and it simplifies the verification requirement. There's also for SNAP, when you're a SNAP recipient, you have to provide verification every couple of months because there's a good likelihood that these individuals that are homebound and are on fixed incomes, the likelihood of their income changing drastically from month to month or 6 months from now is low. So there is a 36-month enrollment period so that they're not having to worry about proof of income or verification every couple months. And then lastly, which I think is very innovative and probably should be implemented in other programs where this can be done, but the state has also made it available to data match. So individuals that are eligible for Medicaid, if they find that they're eligible for Medicaid and there's a good likelihood that they also are eligible for SNAP. And so it makes it easy to kind of match those individuals, which would, again, kind of address the problem with enrollment and just a lack of awareness of the program. So if they're not aware that they qualify for SNAP or not aware of the program, if they're applying for Medicaid as the target benefit, then there's a good likelihood that they'll match you automatically and allow you and kind of notify you that you are also eligible for SNAP. Other bill casualties. So again, we going back to this notion and the vocabulary of killing and dying. There were sadly a lot of bills that would have had a good chance of passing. One of them is the vehicle asset test, but it didn't make it out of committee, and so it came very close, and we're sad about that. So to put things into perspective for those that are not familiar with the SNAP application and the vehicle asset test, in order for you, one of the questions that's asked in the SNAP application is the value of cars and the amount of cars that you have. And it's an outdated baseline and threshold that hasn't been updated since the 70s. And so oftentimes nowadays you have two-parent households where it's very common to have like 2 cars or more. And so it penalizes if you have a car that doesn't meet the threshold. I think it was $15,000 or so for the first car, and then if you have a second car, it can't have more of a value of a $4,000 plus dollars. So they're very outdated. It needs to be, the vehicle asset test needs to be modernized, and there are advocates that that would even say that I think there's 35 states that don't have it altogether. Texas is one of the very few ones that still continue to do it, and it's a choice as a state that that our elected officials have made to continue having this test. But it does penalize a lot of people, and it limits the amount of people that are able and could qualify, that should be on the program, but for some reason or another don't qualify because of this vehicle asset test. The other thing to note is during the pandemic, there were so many people that tragically lost their jobs. Some folks that had corporate jobs and had corporate insurance and corporate benefits, and for some reason or another, they found themselves in a food bank line. And you do see all these like images of long lines with cars that are seeking assistance and emergency food assistance with nice cars. And so it does put into perspective that these policies are really outdated, and the fact that we haven't accounted for inflation does impact families that are in the situation that families are facing now, where families that wouldn't traditionally have sought these programs are now seeking them and probably qualify and would benefit from them, but can't access them. Couple of other bills. So HB 1230 and SB 1914 would have excluded the value of vehicles in determining a person's eligibility for obtaining SNAP benefits. These bills would have allowed only the person's financial situation to be accounted for. So again, taking the vehicle asset test out of the picture altogether and just really focusing on the person's financial situation versus asking, how many cars they have. And a couple of other bills that unfortunately did not make it through. There were several bills around increasing support for SNAP employment and training. Those didn't leave the House and Senate committees, and so unfortunately they ended up dying in the process. And then finally, family sanctions on SNAP. So right now there is a sanction. It penalizes if someone, if one family member within a family like loses their job, then it disqualifies other people within that same family from qualifying for SNAP. So again, a lot of bill casualties that were unfortunate, but we were able to pass that senior hunger bill, and hopefully as we build a larger constituent base here locally and inform people of the importance of some of these other bills, we'll have better traction next time to be able to pass some of these other bills and get them through the actual process. I did want to highlight these last couple of recommendations. So again, I commend everyone for being part of this meeting. There's a lot of things that I could have suggested, but I wanted to start just from a very preliminary standpoint, which is one, register to vote. If you're not already registered, or if you know of people that are not registered, that's the first place to start. The second is really to vote in every local, state, and national election, because every vote matters, every voice matters. So if you have, if you're active in your congregation or your place of worship, and there's a way to promote voting or to promote having people access and getting people access to register to vote, please do so. It's really, really important to be part of that political process. And more importantly, to advocate on behalf of other people. So the other thing is just to get involved with the coalition. So if you're not already involved in one of our action teams, I would encourage you to be involved, to really participate in some of the strategy and be a backbone to supporting the work that's happening collectively. Last is look up who represents you and read up on them. You'd be surprised how many people don't actually know like who actually represents them. But when it comes down to making decisions, they are very, very important. And so it's really important for you to know who represents you, and not only who represents you, but who represents other people around you. So if they don't necessarily live in your precinct, or they're not your representative for your district, but they're a representative that's right next door, or a district right next door, that's really important for you to know as well. Get informed about the issues that are important to you and your community. This is a good example of that, participating in forums like these. But we have events happening year round. So if you're, we welcome you to come back and participate in those forums to learn more. You also want to follow action alerts of organizations following important legislation and encourage your sphere of influence to take action on these. So Lupe gave a really good example of some of the resources that are available through Bread for the World, but there are a lot of local organizations doing really great work and that are also tracking these bills and also sharing the information and providing you with easy ways to kind of engage that are meaningful, where it doesn't require you to do a lot of work on your end, but it makes it really easy for you to kind of submit a name and be impactful to moving legislation forward. Lastly, reach out to your elected official when they are not in session and begin to develop a relationship. A lot of the work begins way before they ever get to Austin. So the times that they're in session, it's because there's already been work done previously, and there's already been seeds planted to have someone champion certain bills. And so they really need to hear from you prior to them ever getting to the next legislative session. So now's the time to really develop relationships. There's always an opportunity to engage. I'll do a plug. I know that we're gonna talk about this later, but we have events year round. We have an upcoming policy roundtable that's coming up November 11th. We'd love to have you guys there if you're interested in the connection between transportation and food security. We have a dynamic panel that we have set up, and I want to give props to our policy action team that put their thought leadership together to put this on. And specifically Ashley Haddo, who's one of our team members that really led some of the efforts to make sure that this happened. So we'd love to have you guys there. Well, during all these policy roundtables, there's always a call to action at the end. So if you're looking for ways to kind of engage in specific issues, this is a great way to kind of plug in. And then lastly, I provided and highlighted a couple of action alert resources. So our North Texas Food Bank is a dynamic organization that has an advocacy arm. Dr. Valerie Hawthorne is an awesome leader that provides action alerts and advocacy emails. United Way of Metropolitan Dallas also does great work and does have an action and advocacy arm to them as well. They also follow some of these bills. From a state perspective, Feeding Texas and Texas Impact, that focuses a lot on the faith community and has a specific place where you can talk about nutrition and hunger. And then nationally, Food Research and Action Center that does really great work nationally. And then I also provided faith engagement resources. So I did some research and found different organizations that have guides for different faith traditions. So if you're wanting to do a hunger seder or a Ramadan dinner, if you're wanting to do a prayer vigil, there's different ways that you can engage, and there's resources specifically that guide you through how to create those events and those opportunities for your members. And then lastly, just to put a seed, I know that a lot of churches are really reluctant to be active in the political space or even advocacy space because they don't know where the lines are drawn when it comes to your IRS standing. And so there's a lot of fear of like, what can I do or what can I not do? There is an organization called Boulder Advocacy that does tremendous work nationally and regionally, and they even have an office here in Texas, where they do training specifically for organizations that are wanting to learn more about the guidelines of what I can do and what I can't do. I've attended those in the past. I've recommended that to other people and they've loved it. Would recommend if you have any interest in engaging further around advocacy, that you take advantage of those trainings and events. And I felt like I went a little over, so I apologize to the chairs, but I'll stop there and stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Daphne or Chelsea to take over.
Thank you so much, Denise, for all that valuable information. It does look like we already have a question there in the chat, and it says, how do you find out the committee's chairs and members?
So the chairs are listed on our website. Wynella has done a great job at making sure that gets updated. So all of the chair information is on the DCHS website. With regards to the members, we all keep like a different individual member list. So I think that's at the description of the different chairs to identify who those members are. But usually for some of these committees, it's ongoing, so people kind of come in and out. We would prefer consistent engagement, but for some of the events, especially for the policy roundtables, we get an influx of people that are joining us for the first time. And then we have our core group that actually does the strategy and the planning piece. And that's what I would consider our core group. So it depends on the committee.
Great, and it looks like Lupe has dropped a link there for you as well to access information. Thank you for that. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And Denise, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat again, just so it's front and center here as it's fresh on everybody's minds. Thank you. We'll have a few more seconds in case any other questions come through. Great, and you will have both presenters' contact information, and you'll be receiving the slides as well. So if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to them or us, and we will help you get connected with the answers to those. Thank you. And Dabney, I think you're on mute. There we go.
Are we on announcements now?
Correct.
Please.
Okay. Well, I can bring up my screen whenever you're ready and we can continue with those.
Sure.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, sure. All right, do you see announcements there?
Yes. I'll begin. You know, Denise highlighted the numbers for senior hunger. And I know that there are a lot of needs out there. And the reason I'm highlighting VNA Meals on Wheels is that I don't know if you all get notices on Meals on Wheels, but I do, because I've signed up to be a volunteer recently and have not been able to do that yet, but do plan on it. But the last notification I received, which was today, is that they have 670 open routes, particularly on Monday and Friday. To me, that was astonishing. When I had to get the list and count, and it took me a while because I was so, surprised. I mean, I just was very surprised. So I wanted to let you all know that from the faith community standpoint, they have made it very easy to sign up, get brief training. They have a mobile app that they use, and you don't have to necessarily commit for every week or every month. Their needs are most great on Mondays and Fridays, and you all can probably understand why that is. And so Wyanella, the VNA Meals on Wheels happens to be in our Hunger Solutions Guide that what Wyanella talked about earlier. And this is just a copy of that page that describes their impact and what you can do to get involved, in a contact person at the bottom. So I would encourage you, if you are with faith organizations, or you want to get your neighborhood involved or whatever, is to just consider the needs of Meals on Wheels for seniors and those who are disabled. Thank you.
For some reason, my cursor is stuck here. So let me see what I can do to unstick it. And okay, we're back. I think Allison Reese, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay.
So, hey, hi everyone. It's good to see everybody today. So I just want to highlight the Super Schools and the Super Bowl of Caring and the Tackle Hunger Map. It's all tied together. The Tackle Hunger Map being our newest resource that allows either faith-based organizations or really anyone interested to see where our local food charities are. And I encourage, if you are a food charity, make sure you're on our Tackle Hunger map. I think we're pretty well saturated in the DFW area, but we want to make sure our charities are reporting. And if they're on the map and we have a good email address, then they're going to get you get a periodic email that says, what's your current status? And within 1 second, you can self-report how your food charity is doing, if they're in need of non-perishables, perishables, or if they're in specific critical need, meaning you're at risk of turning away clients who are in need of food or your services. And that is essential, obviously, to what we're talking about today, which is resilient communities. And it's a real collaborative resource that we can use. For us, it was really an outgrowth of our mission to unite all communities to tackle hunger. And so as it relates to schools, one of the really easy ways that churches and faith groups can participate with our programs and with the Tackle Hunger map is to notice where your neighborhood food charities are and be a resource, be a support, look where your neighborhood schools are, be a support, have a conversation with those principals, because 9 times out of 10, food will be one of the places where that school is needing your help. And there are lots of ways in which Super Bowl Hearing has resources to help engage and give you some ideas about ways in which you can do that easily and not being intimidated by kind of the scope of what that might look like. Certainly you can reach out to me. I can put my email address in the chat, but I'm here local in Dallas and care very deeply about the DFW region and making sure that everyone who is hungry has the ability to get resources. And we want to make sure our food charities have what they need in order to be able to do that. So check out the Tackle Hunger map. I'll put the link to that in the chat as well. If your charity isn't already on the map, you can very easily put it on there. There's a tab on the map itself that says contact. You can input that information there, and then our people make sure you're really a food charity, and we approve and get you on the map very quickly. So we would love to have any other questions. You can email me and I'll be happy to help in any way. And thanks, Wyanella, for letting me chat for just a minute about all that.
Sure. Okay, I don't know what happened okay, let's see. All right, Tackle Hunger map. Are there any other announcements that anyone would like to make, or any opportunities or resources that you want to share about? Let me see.
Well, Nella, I'll just go ahead and put the registration link for the regional webinar in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Thank you, yes. All right, so our next meeting is scheduled for January 20th. That'll be our winter meeting at 1:30 p.m. and look for information about that. It will likely be virtual. We're kind of looking at the spring, perhaps, for a coming together, for a reconvening in person. So keep your fingers crossed on that. But at this point, it looks like the January meeting will be virtual. More to come. And if you want to learn more about the Dallas Coalition for Hunger Solutions, the Faith Community Action Team, the Policy Action Team, and any of our other focus areas and upcoming events, all of that is on our website. You can also follow us on social media. And I think that's it. Dabney, Chelsea, I'll let one of you close us out. Let me see,
Great. Well, once again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. We really appreciate it. And a big thank you to both of our presenters today, Ms. Denise Gomez and Mr. Lupe Conchas. Thank you so much for sharing that information to us. Very valuable presentation. Thank you. Each of you reserve the date for our next meeting in January, and we hope to see you there. Thank y'all and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you.